What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got a review of the Mercedes CLA 45 AMG after 6 months as my daily car. So I ordered this car right around March of 2020, and it came in at the start of 2021, and I decided to make a video on it, and I was surprised that it got over 600,000 views because even though it was a new model, I wasn't sure if it was exactly one that a lot of people are interested in, but it does seem to be one that people have a lot of questions about and is relatively popular as well. So I'm going to talk about the tech side of things as someone who is really into tech, as well as the driving experience, of course, the little different convenient features and whether or not it is enough cargo for my needs, the things that I like and dislike about it, and just my overall opinion as an owner after 6 months. So as you can see right here, the overall spec of the car is with the black trim. I also added the Magno paint, which is the satin color, and I'm going to talk about the durability of that. But generally speaking, I am very happy with the overall experience after having this car, and I feel like it really does suit my needs. So just going over some of the exterior features of the car, I went with the Magno gray color, which is like a matte finish, and I really like it so far. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say you probably could have just got a wrap, and that is totally true because a lot of people have asked me if this is a wrap or if it's the actual paint finish. And being an option that is over $3,000 in Canada, I feel like it's one that definitely looks nice in person and it stays very clean, and durability hasn't been an issue at all. Even though I have taken this through the touchless car wash in the gas station. I've also hand washed it, but overall my general opinion of the paint so far is that it has held up very well, but you do still want to be very careful with it because with any wrap you can replace it, whereas the paint with something like this, if you chip it or scratch it, it is going to be very, very hard to repair. So that's just something to keep in mind. The rims, on the other hand, are a matte black finish with a silver rim around it, and I really like this color combination as well. And it also has this Formula One inspired hubcap here, which is just a plastic piece that comes off before the tire can be unscrewed and everything. One thing that I do like about the contrasting silver edge is that if you end up curbing your rims somehow like I did, it is much less visible than if your entire rim was black. And I'm not even going to go into how I did that, but yeah, as you can see, it does kind of hide it very well. Otherwise, the overall trim pack of the car is an option in the CLA 45 AMG, and I did go ahead with the night package, which has it in gloss black with all the trims and everything in the gloss black as well. But one thing that I did have to get wrapped was the actual handles. They are still chrome, and I feel like after making them gloss black, it just fits the rest of the theme very nicely, and all the badges and everything are ones that I did on my own. So now onto the back of the car. This is probably where you're going to notice the biggest visual difference between the GT AMG and the CLA 45. It is definitely not the longest car, and when you really do compare it, the cargo space is what you would expect out of a relatively small coupe. And as someone who has a lot of camera gear, I definitely noticed that right away. But you do have the ability to fold down the seats, which is really nice. In order to pop the trunk, a lot of people don't know, but you actually just press the logo and the trunk will open up. And there you have all the access, and if you want to fold down the back seats, you just pull this lever here, and you have to go to the front to actually push them down. But yeah, overall it is a pretty average amount of trunk space that you would expect of a car like this. And in terms of the look itself, I once again think it looks really good, and I recommend anybody who has the night package and the gray paint to go ahead and switch the badges out into the black ones because it kind of does complete the look. Another observation that I also made is that the exhaust system is actually just one on each side, but for visual purposes they've split it up into 2 different ones just to make it look a little bit more aggressive. But in terms of the actual functionality, it is 2, and sound is definitely an area that this car does lack a little bit due to the regulations, and I think this new model for 2020 and 2021 was the first one to be affected by that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop in the car, drive around and cover some of the categories, and in the end, we're also going to answer a Q&A that I got over on Instagram for everyone who might have questions about this car. So now that we're in the car, I'm going to give you my review of the vehicle from a few different categories, whether it's the interior, the tech perspective, because we are a tech channel, and also the driving experience, which is probably the area that I have the least experience in because I don't review cars on an everyday basis. But after having a few sports cars, I do notice the characteristics of it and the driving experience, which is obviously a huge part of this model, and especially in the updated model of the CLA 45 AMG. And I think the biggest thing I noticed is that this this model in particular, after its update this year, seems to have a lot of improvements that bring it to like a 2021 or like a new generation Mercedes vehicle, both from the tech aspect, but also unifying it with the higher end of AMG vehicles, including the GT63 AMG, which is like their flagship. And that's like especially noticed in the interior features as well as the exterior options, the Pan America grille, which is a huge feature and probably one of the biggest reasons why I went ahead with this vehicle from like a visual perspective. From a tech standpoint, you're also going to notice that this car has all the bells and whistles, whether it is the cameras, the sensors, the actual experience on the infotainment system and the Mercedes Me UI. But there are also a few areas where I feel like they have simulated, and unless you take a very close look, you may not notice them. So there is definitely a lot to talk about, so let's just fire up the engine and start driving. So before we move on, I want to give a huge thanks to the sponsor of this video, Survivor, and their Endurance collection of iPhone 12 cases. So with the theme of this video being in the wilderness and out and about, it's important to have a smartphone case that is able to protect your device from your everyday use. Whenever I'm looking for a good iPhone case, I want something that is both stylish, durable, and also doesn't add too much bulk to an already large device like the iPhone 12 Pro Max that I have. The Survivor Endurance checks all these boxes through its 3-layer construction, a 40-core shock absorption technology, and it's able to withstand up to 14 feet in tested drops to military standards. The case itself just feels very durable overall, and I think it looks really good, especially in this blue color with my navy blue iPhone 12 Pro Max. And I also like the fact that it has nice textured sides, so it just enhances the overall grip of your device. The main surface also has an antimicrobial protection that eliminates 99.9% of surface bacteria and germs, and it also resists scratches and discoloration. You can obviously still wireless charge it, and it also comes with a lifetime guarantee and is available in black, navy, and cloud pink. But here's a drop test from about 10 feet onto solid concrete in the office loft, and as you can see, the case is essentially flawless, and of course my phone is still in perfect condition. If you guys want to go ahead and check it out for yourself, the Survivor Endurance is now available at Verizon, and I'm going to drop a link to everything down below. So I think the biggest selling point for me when it comes to Mercedes is the interior. And I came from a BMW where the design hadn't changed in many years. It was a little bit more of a muted design. And even though it was able to get the job done, Mercedes was just like another level beyond in terms of how everything looked, as well as some of the function and tech. And I just felt like it was a much more futuristic feel, but at the same time, very elegant. Some of the areas that you might notice is like the vents, for example. They all are like rounded. They've got like a metal look to it, and I think that looks really good. And the steering wheel was also another element where you have like the flat bottom, which I always enjoyed, but it's also very comfortable. And I also like the fact that you have the ability to control some of the car settings from the steering wheel itself. Beyond that, the shifters on the back are all made of metal, and even though this model does creak occasionally, which was a comment that I saw other owners also mention, it honestly is pretty well built overall from the 6 months that I've had it, and I haven't really had any issues or anything that I noticed beyond that. When it comes to like the interior finish, I went with like the stock model that has a mix of Alcantara and leather. There is also options to go with full leather, but I feel like the mix is actually pretty good from like a sport and leisure perspective. And by going with comfort seats, I heard that was the choice that you want to go with, because even though the sport seats are really nice, they are a little bit more bucket style and heavily bolstered, so they are a little bit stiffer and not as comfortable for everyday driving, which is what I do for the most part. So I'm really happy that I went with this option, and I think the Alcantara and leather blend has held up very nicely. The steering wheel feels great. You do have a nice level of grip to go with that as well. Another one of my favorite features is the LED lights. You can go into the system and change it to any color that you want. It also has like different sequences, and at night especially, it makes your car feel like a spaceship. So I actually went ahead and customized it to just have like a blue and purple look. But another small touch that I also noticed with the LEDs is that as you change the temperature of the car, the vents will actually correlate to the color of whether you adjusted the temperature higher or lower. So when it comes to like the comfort beyond the seating, I think it really does depend on your height. It's no secret that this is not the largest coupe. It is relatively short in terms of its length, so the interior room is not exactly large. And for someone my height, it is totally fine, but if you're like 6'1" or something, you might feel a little bit claustrophobic because your head will be pretty close to the ceiling, and especially in the back, you might have a little bit problem. It doesn't have like the most legroom or anything, but other than that, I think from a comfort perspective, if you're in the front, you shouldn't really have an issue. So a lot of what makes the interior experience great on the CLA 45 has to do with the technology. And that is like a good transition because there is a lot to talk about, and some of them are features that you might notice right off the bat, whereas others are ones that I continue to discover, which is kind of why we're doing this like 6-month review. So for starters, there's actually 2 screens in front, which is probably one of the selling points when it came to the interior, because I saw my buddy had the Mercedes that had the same layout and I thought it looked really good. It is all like one flush piece and it looks like one pane of display, but you have like your main dash over here, and on the other side you have your general system to control all of the settings of the car, of course, and also Apple CarPlay, which is what I'm using right now. And you're able to fully customize this just like you can change all the LED settings and the colors to like a sport mode, a comfort mode. You can have it in like a track mode as well that shows all the specific details that you might want to know about the car while you're driving it. And over on this side, I'm able to like have the maps from the Mercedes system. And what I found super cool is that if I was using the Mercedes navigation system, for example, when it comes to like a turn or something, it will actually have like a camera enable to show exactly where to turn in like a holographic setup. And that was something that I didn't really know about before, and for some people that can be really useful, especially if you're in another city and don't exactly know where to go in the specific time. I know it's like a bit of an extra feature, but beyond that, if you want to just use Apple CarPlay, it does work pretty well, but it doesn't actually take up the entire screen just due to the aspect ratio of this display. From like a parking perspective, there are also cameras all around the car. There's the one on the back that is actually built into the rear logo, and you will also find one on the front as well. So as you're trying to like park and get in the spot, the 360 camera will automatically pop up and it will show how close you are to the wall and everything, while also giving you the sensor distance. Those are once again like very additional features that I feel like on a car of this size you might not always need, but are still very nice to have when bundled into the whole parking package. But I do find that even after adjusting some of the parking sensitivity functions, if I'm just pulling up to like an intersection or slowing down, it does often kind of false activate when I don't exactly need it. That is kind of the only flaw that I noticed. The other thing is that you can also go ahead and customize the driving modes and also the actual interface and settings, such as the lighting and like the seat and all that kind of stuff. But I just find that it could correlate a little bit better in like the different profiles, because a lot of times I find that you'd be activating the driving mode. The actual like driver profile is often automated, but I think like having one profile that essentially defaults everything to what you originally set it to as a single driver would make a lot more sense. The menu system is really easy to navigate though, and I like all the options that it does give you, but the only complaint that I would have is that the input could be better. I know like the kind of options of the future are to have like a touchscreen input, a touchpad, as well as being able to use like a touch capacitive button on the steering wheel as well. But I will say it is a little bit hard to navigate at times, trying to use like the touchpad while I'm driving and stuff, but I also don't really like the fact that it doesn't disable one input over another when another is being used. So I could have like my phone plugged in and like say I have like the cable hanging around, it might like accidentally control something while I'm trying to use it on the steering wheel. So when it comes to like the stereo system, this is an area that I had very high hopes for, but was a little bit disappointed. But at the same time, in hindsight, after seeing it included in a package as opposed to being at the price that it's usually at, I guess I'm not that surprised. So this car has the Burmester option selected, and Burmester is a brand name that usually costs like $7,000 or $8,000 in like a Mercedes or a Porsche, but this is not the 360 Burmester speaker system. It's an option that is included in one of the packages, and even though I did expect it to be pretty solid, I would say that even though the audio quality is pretty decent, it really isn't anything impressive. In higher volumes, it does seem to like vibrate a lot of like the car. It doesn't have like the best dampening setup, but at the same time, I also found that like in some areas such as the bass, it can be a little bit muddy as well. It is more so like a Burmester like branding, where like all the speaker grills have like the Burmester logo on it and everything. But in terms of the actual quality, having heard a real Burmester system before, I can sort of see why it was included in a package, but it would have been nice to be able to actually pay the full amount and get the 360 sound experience. So I'm not saying that it's like not worth it or anything. That entire package that it comes in does have a lot of features that you're probably going to want, but just don't expect it to have like the most impressive speaker system out there. So the upgraded LED headlights are another option that I also chose. And I wasn't exactly sure if it was something that was needed, but it did seem like after doing a little bit of research, people really like the upgraded headlights in Mercedes vehicles. And I found that it actually does a really good job at night in the automatic mode, where it actually creates a bit of like a wall effect to allow you to see a lot more than you usually would be able to. So for the price of the upgrade, I think it is going to be worth it for a lot of people out there. So generally speaking, when it comes to the interior and tech, I will say the interior looks great. And after 6 months, I'm still not bored of it at all. I think all the details and everything have been adapted from like the higher end lineup of Mercedes. And moving forward, I think it's going to be a very popular option just because of the interior design. They've really brought it up to date and found a good balance between like an elegant look, but also very futuristic and technological. And on the tech side of things, the only kind of comments I have is that the input could be a little bit better in terms of its accuracy. I do find that a lot of times I might get like false presses, or with such like a small nub, it's hard to be able to control very precisely, especially in Apple CarPlay. And I also find that the speaker system is a little bit of a disappointment, but I do understand that it comes in a large package where there are a ton of other features, and that the Burmester options standalone in like the full experience of the 360 audio is just not an available option on this car. But I understand a lot of people are gonna hear the name Burmester and think they're gonna get a lot out of it. And I will say it's more so like an upgraded package, but doesn't exactly live up to the name aside from it being like a branding thing. You do also have a wireless charging pad built in, but because Apple CarPlay requires your car to be connected via USB Type-C on the port right here, I don't actually use it that often because it is charging the phone anyways when connected. On the topic of cargo though, we're not going to talk too much about that because you don't really get a CLA 45 to completely haul a bunch of furniture and stuff. And even though it would have been nice to have a bit more room because of like camera equipment and everything, I would say that the cargo is as good as it gets for a car of this size, because you're able to fold down all the seats through the levers on the back, but you do also have to come to the front and still like actually fold them. And to be able to pull them back, that has to be done manually as well, which I found a little bit odd because I know in a lot of cases you're able to kind of push the seats down and bring them back up from the back trunk. I know it's like a bit of a little thing, but I would say that you're able to fit like large luggage, camera equipment, obviously like grocery and maybe some furniture. But in terms of height, you don't really have much to work with at the back just due to the shape and form factor of the CLA 45. So before we go into like the Q&A, let's go ahead and talk about the actual driving experience of the CLA 45 AMG. And just on the spec rundown side of things, this car is the fastest production 4-cylinder vehicle that is on the market right now. And even though there is the CLA 45S in Europe, that is actually not an option available in North America. The CLA 45 is the highest one, but it is still a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, and it does produce around 100 horsepower per cylinder. And I can tell you that off the line, it does have that jump. And when it comes to the driving modes, you have the Comfort, the Sport Plus, and also the Individual, which is the one that allows you to fully customize all the settings of the car, whether it is like in drift mode. You could also have like the traction control off. And being a 4MATIC Plus, it is technically an all-wheel drive car that usually uses the front wheels, but at the same time, it can fully shift the torque to the rear wheel as well if it needs to. So depending on the situation that it is in, it kind of adjusts accordingly. And generally speaking, I found that the car was really good at judging where the power was needed. And there was actually also a snow mode that I didn't know about before, but when it was snowing, I think earlier this year, I was actually able to navigate very well, unexpectedly, having summer tires. The only issue that I really experienced in the snow was in areas where snow was piled up, and being a really low car, there really isn't anything that you can expect out of it. But in terms of the actual drive driving in generally like slippery conditions, it actually did a really good job. So when it comes to the driving experience, the biggest thing that you're going to notice is that this car is very responsive and agile. The steering feels great. I find that it's more of like a medium stiffness from the other cars that I've driven before, and I think it does have a good balance between like sportiness and also a comfort drive for just like the day-to-day. And like right off the line, it is able to go. You definitely feel that power. And I also think it feels very, very balanced in the fact that the center of gravity is there. It just is very planted. And if you're making like a sharp turn or anything, you don't feel like the car is like fully leaning. But I think at this size, I kind of expected that out of it. But overall, I just think like from a driving perspective, it is what I was looking for. Something I could daily drive, and at the same time, if I take it on the highway or go on a little bit of a road trip, I'm able to get some speed out of it. It's just a car that's easy to have a lot of fun with. And when I was kind of looking at what was going to be the next car that I was going to order, I was looking for a blend between like leisure, a little bit of practicality, which comes in the 4-door, and also the ability to fold down the back seats, but at the same time, more sportiness than I had before, paired with a nice luxury interior. So I think on that front, it's checked all the boxes. I think what's nice is that between the driving modes, you really do feel the difference. Right now we're in the sport mode, and you could definitely feel the bumps and every little bit of the road a little bit more, just to give you a more like engaged feedback. But if you're in like the comfort mode, just trying to get to work and stuff, then you do notice that it does dampen things a little bit. And even though it is like a noticeable difference, I wouldn't say it's like night and day. So you always still get like that bit of character out of the car at all times. So at the end of the day, what do I think about the Mercedes CLA 45 AMG, and am I happy with it after having it for 6 months? And the simple answer is yes. For the most part, the driving experience is everything that I expected, and I'm very satisfied with that. And in terms of the way the interior looks and the tech features, I think they've checked all those boxes very nicely, with a few quirks here and there, but no car is perfect at the end of the day. And the only comment that I have is that I wish the cargo was a bit more, but I know that's kind of my fault and not exactly to do with the car, because if you need a lot of cargo, you typically don't get a coupe of this size. I just noticed that the interior was just another level compared to what I had before, and the driving experience was also there to match that. So now that we've driven around, I'm in a parking lot now, and I'm gonna go over some of the questions that you guys asked over on Instagram, because I seem to get quite a few every time we like put up a Q&A, so I figured we'd do like a dedicated one on the car itself. So the first question is any mechanical issues. And in the first 6 months, I put about 4,000 kilometers on it, which isn't exactly a lot. And the only thing I've run into is the coolant had to be filled up, which I feel like is pretty early. But after like a 30-second stop at the dealership, they were able to figure it out. And they actually mentioned that it could have been like a sensor misread or something like that, but it was really no big deal. The other one is other cars in mind. So I was told that the GT63 AMG is absolutely incredible. Blazendary, Giancarlo mentioned that he absolutely loves everything about his. And what I do like about it is that obviously it's like a full AMG experience, a lot more expensive, but it does have that hatchback, which I actually do value quite a bit. In terms of like actual cars that I've been interested in, I think the next one I really want to get like a Porsche. I've always wanted like a 911 or a Panamera, maybe even a Taycan or a Taycan Cross. That's always just been like on my wish list, and I've always wanted a Range Rover as well. So whether it's like a 1-car or a 2-car, I don't really want to spend like an insane amount of money on a car lease at the moment, just because I'm still into buying real estate. So for now, I plan to have this one for the next 3 years and eventually switch to something maybe more practical, or do like a company car and a 2-door for fun. The next one is how has the matte paint held up and any special maintenance needed? So the Designo Magno paint is the one that I went with, and it was a no-brainer when it came to looking at the options. Even though it does cost extra money, I've seen pictures of it and it looks amazing, and I figured just to be a little bit unique, it would make sense to get, and I am not disappointed by it in any way. The only thing is a lot of people think it's a wrap, and I think a wrap could have the same effect, but the thing about this paint is that you have to be very, very careful with it, because if you chip the car, they're gonna have to like repaint that entire section, and even then it may not look the same. So I've been told that you do want to take special care, and it's just like one of those where I think a lot of people are just going to go ahead and get like a wrap that you can remove and replace at any time. But in terms of special care, just don't take it through the gas station car wash. It also comes with, like, I mean, Mercedes sells like some soap. I don't know if everybody's car comes with it, but mine did. But you just don't want to use any sort of wax or like a clay bar, because then it would kind of ruin the effect of the matte finish. But otherwise, it's held up very nicely. And even when the car is dirty, it still looks relatively clean. So the next question is, do you quickly get used to the horsepower, or is it a daily driver that continues to impress? When I first got it, it was a lot faster than my previous car, and so I was kind of like shocked by just how fast it was off the line. But I think nowadays, after having it for 6 months, like anything, you do sort of get used to it. Until you take it out on the highway, you realize like the full potential of it. Whereas in just like everyday driving around the city and downtown, where it's a lot of stop and go, you don't really get to take advantage of it. But off the line, I am still like pretty impressed by just how fast it is. So the next question on here is, what is the best and worst thing about the car? I would say the best thing about it is that the tech and everything is really nice. The interior as a whole, I'm very happy with, and I think it's probably the biggest reason why I switched over from BMW. But obviously the driving is, there's so many things that you could talk about when it comes to that. But the biggest thing I think was the interior experience. The thing that I don't like about it isn't really the car's fault, but it's the cargo. I can't really fit much in the back, and if you're like always gonna have somebody sitting in the back seat, it just isn't the most comfortable for that. But I do still think for my uses, a 4-door is significantly more convenient than having a 2-door. The next question that I also got quite a few of is it a good daily driver? And the easy answer to that is yes. Between the different modes, you do notice a difference. It is able to go between like the comfort and the sport and just be a little bit smoother in the comfort mode. So as a daily driver, I think it is a lot of fun, and it finds a good balance of being fun, but at the same time sporty and giving you that luxury experience as well. How many software updates have I received for this car? I believe I've got one so far, and there was like a letter that lets you know that they're going to be issuing an update for something, and I believe it does it by itself over the air, which is nice. The last question I'm going to answer is, does it feel like a cheap AMG? And I can't really give like a full response to that just because I haven't had like a real AMG, but I would say for the price that it is at, you do get a ton of the characteristics of the AMG. You've got the design, you got some of the performance. It is a handcrafted engine. It's got a ton of power, and a lot of areas of like the design and the visuals are really like similar to the GT63 AMG, which is the top of the line, and it costs like 2 or 3 times more once you like spec it out and everything. So I would say that even though some people in the last video were saying like, oh, it's like a fake AMG, I honestly don't really care. If I wanted to get a real AMG, I would. But like for what I need it for in a city where like there's not like that many nice cars around, and for the amount that I drive, I think it's able to suit all these needs. And for the price that it starts at, to be able to get all these great features and also the visual correlation to the top end, I think it's great. But I can understand that some people who might have like the GT63 AMG might feel like it looks a little bit too similar to a model that costs significantly more. There are some areas that you definitely feel like they may have cheated it a little bit from the AMG experience, which is like the exhaust, for example. It is actually only 2, but it looks like 4 based on the trim kit. And there's also like the fake cutouts on the front. The exhaust noise is also coming out of the speakers and is not exactly that loud. So there are certain like areas that they may have cut corners, but I do feel like they found a good balance of giving you a lot of great features and that AMG title more so than not. As always, though, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you guys want to see some more car videos. I know I'm really trying to still get used to the whole driving while talking kind of thing, which is pretty difficult, and I've been learning that, as you can see in this episode. But if you enjoyed it, make sure you drop a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.